God of creation, there at the start, before the beginning of time. With no point of reference, you spoke to the dark and fleshed out the wonder of light. And as you speak, 100 billion galaxies are born. In the vapor of your breath, the planets form. If the stars were made to worship so light, I can see your heart in everything you've made. Every burning star, a signal fire of grace. If creation sings your praises so loud, so will I. God of your promise, you don't speak in vain, no syllable empty or void. For once you have spoken, all nature and science follow the sound of your voice. And as you speak, 100 billion creatures catch your breath, evolving in pursuit of what you say. If it all reveals your nature so alive, I can see your heart in everything you say. Every painted sky, a canvas of your grace. If creation still obeys you so loud, so will I. If the stars were made to worship so loud, if the mountains bow in reverence so loud, if the oceans roar your greatness, so will I. For if everything exists to lift you high, so will I. If the wind goes away, send it so alive. If the rocks cry out in silence, so will I. If the sound before our praise is still for shine, then we'll sing again 100 billion times. God of salvation, you chased down my heart through all of my failure and pride. On the hill you created, the light of the world, abandoned in darkness to die. And And as you speak, 100 billion failures disappear. Where you lost your life so I could find it here. If you left the grave behind you.
So hello and welcome to this Youth Sunday celebration. I suppose I should start by introducing myself. My name is Father Simon Gore. I'm the Director of Youth Ministry in the Archdiocese of Liverpool. I thought I'd introduce myself first of all because there may be people from further afield than the Archdiocese watching this video, and if so, welcome to you. Also, there may be people watching this video from the Archdiocese who know Animate and maybe even know me and spotted there's something a little bit different. Maybe even think an imposter has snuck into the first bit of the video. Well, no, it is me, and I've decided to go for a new lockdown look. I'll be honest, I'm kind of regretting it. But it is lockdown part 2. And because it is lockdown part 2, that means we can't actually celebrate Youth Sunday as we might normally do and as we might like to do. In a perfect world, of course, we would be gathering in our churches and our parishes to celebrate the feast of Christ the King and celebrate Youth Sunday when we think about all the great things, the great work young people do in our church and especially in our archdiocese. We might have produced leaflets and posters for you to be able to see the work that young people do. That isn't the world that we're living in, as we all know. In an even slightly less than perfect world, we might have been able to have videos and testimonies of young people speaking about their life and their faith for you to watch and see at home, to have your own faith affirmed by the great things young people are doing in our church. But again, even that is quite difficult this year, to be able to meet other people, to be able to get into schools, especially in this lockdown period, is very, very hard. And so we've tried to do something a little bit different. And I'll be honest, this isn't ideal. This wasn't my plan A for this Sunday. What we've tried to do is just create a video for you to watch at home. And whether that is you watching this at home as a parent or a grandparent or a member of the church, to think about perhaps the faith of young people and the challenges that they might face living out that faith, and so perhaps encourage you to pray for young people in our archdiocese. And also, the video, I hope, might be relevant to young people as well. Now, you might not have any young people able to speak to you, peers, people the same age to you, as it was a bit difficult to try and work out how we could do that in the lockdown period. But instead, we've asked some friends of ours to offer a few words themselves about their own lives, the challenges that they faced growing up in the church, growing up in their faith, and the importance of faith to them now that they've realised, and to perhaps offer an affirmation to you, to the young people of our archdiocese. And so we hope that this is a useful video for us all in the Archdiocese of Liverpool to watch in different ways. But no matter who's watching this, no matter where you're watching this, or even when you're watching this, it is important that we don't just start listening to me speak after this brief introduction. It is important that we place ourselves in the hands of God to listen to what He is asking of each one of us. And we're going to do that by listening to the Gospel for today, the Gospel for the Feast of Christ the King, the Gospel for this Youth Sunday.
From the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "When the Son of Man comes in glory, escorted by all the angels, then he will take his seat on his throne of glory. All the nations will be assembled before him, and he will separate men from one another as a shepherd separates sheep from goats. He will place the sheep on his right hand and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, 'Come you whom my Father has blessed, take for your heritage the kingdom prepared for you since the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you made me welcome, naked, and you clothed me, sick, and you visited me, in prison, and you came to see me. Then the virtuous will say to him in reply, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and make you welcome, naked and clothe you, sick or in prison and go to see you? And the king will answer, I tell you solemnly, insofar as you did this to one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did it to me. Next he will say to those on his left hand, Go away from me with your curse upon you, to the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you never gave me food. I was thirsty, and you never gave me anything to drink. I was a stranger, and you never made me welcome. Naked, and you never clothed me. Sick and in prison, and you never visited me. Then it will be their turn to ask, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, a stranger or naked, sick or in prison, and did not come to your help? Then he will answer, I tell you solemnly, insofar as you neglected to do this to one of the least of these, you neglected to do it to me. And they will go away to eternal punishment, and the virtuous to eternal life. The Gospel of the Lord.
For some of you, you might have found that piece of scripture quite familiar. A few years ago, it was part of the theme of Lourdes, the works of mercy. And I do particularly, and maybe even you, like this piece of scripture because it directly instructs us on how we should be living out our faith. I think it's quite a simple message. It's to think about others before ourselves. And so it challenges us when we see maybe injustice in the world, we act upon it. When we see someone alone, we go and sit beside them. When we know someone is sick, we go and visit them. But the thing is, sometimes these direct and simple things which we're told in life, when we have to act upon them, can be the hardest things which we're given. And today's gospel reminds us that it's not an easy challenge. It's not an easy challenge to put others before ourselves. But actually, I think that is somewhat the way of life. I think actually our own life journey, the things which we do, the experiences which we face, the challenges on our journey, outline just how difficult it can be sometimes to put others first. Today we're celebrating Youth Sunday, and to me as a young person, I think it's a fantastic celebration because it reminds us that we are these disciples of the church. We are these young people of the church. And if somewhat you could say, the new generation of the church. And so today, as we do celebrate this fantastic occasion, we do also maybe think about this piece of scripture, about how hard it can be to live and to use within our lives. And I don't think this message simply comes from me. I think even you might be sat there thinking, yeah, I agree. It's quite a hard kind of piece of scripture which we're given. It's kind of a hard challenge we're given to live out. But to maybe help us think about how we can overcome these challenges, how we can use our faith and use it to put it into action, I'm going to just invite Michael now to say a few words on how actually through the challenges there is still that act which we have to face. There is still that thing which we need to do. How do we then actually put others before ourselves.
Hi, I'm Mike, and this Youth Sunday I've been asked to share a little bit about the impact of faith on my life. Now, I could sit here and bore you to death with my life story, and I could sit here and list every single decision I've ever made and rank them in order of being good or bad, but I think you'd just switch off and go and find something better to do with your time. So instead, I'd like to share a little bit about where I've found God in my life. And there's two pathways that I've sort of identified as areas which God has had an impact. The first is in my social life. Now, I've always been shy. I've always taken a little while to warm up to people and really come out of my shell. And I've always struggled to have large groups of friends in all sorts of different areas. But one thing having a faith and practicing that faith has given me is the opportunity to meet new people. One of the hardest things I've found growing up as a young Catholic is meeting other young Catholics. It's almost as if we're in some sort of secret cult. It's like, what are you doing? Why can't you do this on Sunday morning? And it's like, I don't really know. I'm busy, I'm washing my hair, I'm taking the dog for a walk. You say anything under the sun rather than just saying, I'm actually going to Mass. Or they say, why'd you go to that Lourdes place every summer? And you say, because I'm going to volunteer. I'm doing it for me CV. Me nan says she likes it when I go. When in actual fact, what you really want to say is, it's a place where I encounter Christ. It's a place where I find peace. It's a place where I can put my faith into action and serve people from our communities. And through these communities that we find and that we build in places like Lourdes, in our school communities, when we choose to interact with them, doing things like Faith in Action and joining in with the Animate team when they come and work with our different schools, all of these give us an opportunity to meet new people who share our faith. And what these people do is they stoke the fires of faith inside us. And that has been an important thing for me growing up. It's helped me lead a life of decisions where the decisions I make lead me towards God, not away from Him. The second area and the second theme that I sort of feel has had an impact on me is that faith is a door opener. Following Jesus and making those decisions to do as He says has never led me down a path which has ended up with a blocked doorway. It's never taken me down a route that I can't get anywhere from. Now, I'll say it to anyone that listens, my faith is what has led me to be the person that I am today and to be in the position that I am today. I'm really privileged at the minute in that I've got a really stable job that I absolutely love. I teach science in a high school, which is something that it's a subject that I love and it's a subject that I always wanted to work in, and it's a surrounding that I enjoy going to every single day. Now, teaching isn't something I even ever considered until I went to work at Animate for a year. I went and did a gap year because, quite frankly, I had nothing better to do with my time, and it ended up being the best year of my life. I did that because, like I said, I didn't have much going on for me. I needed something to do, and I got a nudge from the big man and a quiet conversation from one of the team members saying, listen, I think you should really give it a go. And it's just these little decisions that take you on a little bit more. If I hadn't gone to World Youth Day, I probably wouldn't have chatted to the Animate team. If I hadn't gone to Animate, I wouldn't have gone into teaching. If I hadn't gone into teaching, I wouldn't have the life I live now. I wouldn't have met the people I know now. I wouldn't have had all of the amazing things that I've encountered since then. And it's all because I practice my faith as a Catholic. It's all because I lived the life that Jesus wants me. So this Youth Sunday, I just really encourage you to reach out. Find those people around you that are going to stoke the fires of faith. Make those decisions that you know to be true in your heart.
So I just wanted to thank Michael for sharing those few words with us there about his life. And you'll see Lauren and I have come together now because we just thought we'd share our own thoughts about things Mike has given us there about his own life. Because I know for me, when I was listening to that story, there was a lot of what Mike said that really fitted in with my own life when I was growing up, especially the idea about perhaps not wanting to talk to your friends all that much about the importance of faith in your life. That's something I could really understand. It's something I probably did myself a bit when I was growing up, as in my teenage years, certainly.
Yeah, I do agree. When I was listening to his testimony then, I kind of did think, when you're at primary school and, you're just like this young, innocent child, you don't think about stuff like that. There's no kind of problems with anything like that. And I feel like it comes when you hit high school and suddenly, we're kind of put into certain groups, we're kind of challenged in what we think and how we act. I remember being at school and I just thought, there's no way, even with these great friends around me, I ever want to mention about my faith. It just was something which I just didn't ever want to get into, really.
It's weird because I think I was the same, you were the same, and Mike shared that, so it must be a fairly common thing, and yet I don't really, now as I look back, I don't really understand why, because the mates I was with at school are still actually my friends now, and I used to play football with them on we used to call the recreation ground near my house. We used to play football on a Sunday, and the parish priest asked me to read at the 6:30 Sunday evening mass. It's known as the Mass for the Dead, because no one went to it, it was incredibly quiet and no one wanted to read, and so I had to read every week, and so it got to about 6 o'clock and my mates were still playing football, and I'd say, I have to go now. I'd say, where are you going? And I wouldn't say, I'm just going to church over there. We could see the church from the place I was playing football, and I would do a big lap around the rec so they couldn't see me going to the church. And now, I said the same friends, and they talk quite openly about the fact I'm a priest and what I do and things. I don't understand why I was so hesitant to talk to them about something that was important to me. It's an odd one.
Yeah, I think that's quite extreme, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah, it is a bit extreme. Yeah.
But I know I do understand, and I get exactly what you're saying, and I think you're right. I think a lot of maybe people watching this now are thinking the exact same thing. It seems to be like this issue of some form. But one thing which Mike did mention, which I did particularly like, was the fact that over time you do become a bit, like you said, you look back and you think, why was I like that? Why at that moment in time couldn't I maybe have the courage to do differently, to think differently? But he mentioned as well, also things happened during that time, things where at the moment, or in that moment, you probably would have thought, this isn't really what I had planned for myself, this isn't really what I wanted to do. But over time, he kind of told us about this knock-on effect of God was always there with him, and he had this plan for Mike, but it took him a long time to recognise that actually all these tiny different things linked together to form his journey of faith, which I thought was really nice.
I suppose that's aiming, because when you're younger, you might not be able to see that plan quite as easily, so perhaps that's where you're a bit more hesitant. I don't want to use the word embarrassed. I'm not sure embarrassed is the right word, but you're perhaps a bit hesitant about talking to your friends because you can't perhaps see God's big plan for you, and that's fine because you are a bit younger. But when you look back, you can see that plan there, and so you realise as you've got older, actually there is a plan for it, and so I'm less hesitant about sharing my faith with other people because I know God is there, and I know He's there because when I look back, I've seen evidence of that. And Mike spoke about not really knowing what he was going to do with his life. He decided to come to World Youth Day with us in Krakow in 2016. It was a great experience. I loved Krakow 2016. And while he was there, Mike got talking to us and some other people, and he decided to apply to join Animate. I'm not saying Animate's the answer to everyone's problems at all, but for Mike, it was one of those God moments.
He actually said it was his favourite year.
It was, yeah, I think that was £5 well spent to get that little plug in. But it must have been a good year because it did help him grow, it helped him develop, as he said himself. And I think it was an experience here when he was working with teachers and schools that maybe set him on this path, he said he's on now, of working in a fantastic school, working in a fantastic environment, sharing his life and his faith with young people at a high school, a secondary school. So it's amazing when you look back like that, you can see where God has been, and perhaps that gives us courage, you just said, to say, actually, I do believe in God. Faith is important to me because I can see evidence of it in my life. And I wish I'd had that when I was younger, but I certainly have it now. But perhaps that's just something to think about on Youth Sunday for like young people watching this. God does have this plan for us. We might not see it at the time, but God is always there with us.
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, now that you kind of ended with that, I feel I can introduce another testimony which we're going to hear now. This one I think is going to be a slightly different kind of basis. We'll see how this goes. It's from Kate. She's the chaplain at All Hallows High School in Penwortham. So we'll see what it's like now.
Over to Kate.
Hi everyone, my name is Kate. Now my faith journey has no major road to Damascus moments, no major highs or lows, it's pretty ordinary really. But there has been a number of people that I know God has definitely placed in my life to remind me of who I am in His eyes and to remind me of the importance God has in my life. I grew up in a pretty normal family, mum, dad and 2 younger brothers. Mum used to take us to church each week and she was always pretty involved in the parish. Through my mum's involvement, I definitely gained plenty of extra grandmas and granddads to accompany me on my faith journey. There are too many to mention individually, but many of these people, including my wonderful mum, showed me what it was to be a Christian and the impact you can have on someone's life by simply being a kind and welcoming person who always has a smile on their face. They taught me the importance of accompaniment, of walking with someone through the ups and downs of life, being there to truly listen without judgment. This theme of welcome and accompaniment are key elements of my faith journey, which you will see repeated throughout the next few minutes. Now, my mum never forced us to go to church as kids. When we were younger, it was just something we did, and we did happily. But as teenage years hit, I was in and out of church. I didn't attend every week, and usually I chose the warmth of my bed on a Sunday morning instead. However, I didn't give up totally. I knew that God and church was important to me and to my mum, and there was always something in my mind that told me and reminded me that the week ahead is usually a lot better after Sunday Mass. And still to this day, I feel more ready and more equipped for the week after attending Mass on Sunday. What also helped is that my mum and other members of the parish ran a YCW Impact youth group every Sunday night and still do to this day. This was a great way for me to keep involved in the church, and what really grabbed my attention and enthusiasm as a teenager was the YCW's method of see, judge and act. All I wanted to do as a teenager was to try and make things better in the world, to fight some of those injustices that I saw. And the YCW helped me to make the link between the injustice that I saw, my faith, and then what the best way was to respond, what the best way was to act. And these adult companions who accompanied us each Sunday evening valued what we had to say. They saw our potential, they believed in us. They listened to us without judgment, and they always did what they can to support us through anything that life threw at us. I was inspired by their commitment to spend their Sunday evenings with a noisy bunch of teenagers. Now life continued, and after enjoying RE GCSE at school, I decided that further study in theology and ethics at A-level was something that I wanted to do. And it was during a revision weekend at Bretta Holt in the Lake District that I first met the Salesian sisters. Now the sisters hosted our revision weekend, and they were always around to chat to and were always keen to get to know us. The welcome that they gave us was something that I will never forget, and I still to this day try my hardest to emulate it. They made us instantly feel at home, and they made us instantly feel at ease with them. Now, I can't really describe it, but I knew that when I left after that weekend, it wasn't going to be the last time that I saw them. And for weeks after my first encounter with the sisters, I could not stop thinking about them. Now, I returned to Breta for Easter and Christmas retreats for 2 years following that, and meeting some incredible Salesian volunteers and making the most amazing friends who made me realise and see the importance, the beauty, and ultimately the joy a close relationship with God can bring. In 2010, I moved into Breta Holt to start a gap year with the sisters. This was the most forming and important year of my life. This year with the sisters revealed to me my vocation, to work with young people and to share the gospel with them. God worked through those sisters every day to help me discover who I was and who God had created me to be. I knew that from my first few months of volunteering at Breta that my life was now dedicated to working with and accompanying young people. It's all I saw myself doing from then on, and as an 18-year-old with pretty low self-esteem, worried about the way I looked and what others thought about me and if I was liked or popular, they helped me realise that I was loved no matter what, that I was created for a purpose, that I was someone worth getting to know. They helped me discover the gifts that I have and that I am here to make an impact on the world. Now, following my gap year, I went on to study for a degree in theology at Heathrow College in London, and I was keen to find out some of the answers to questions about God and my faith that I'd had since I was a teenager. And in gaining the answers, my relationship with God just grew stronger and stronger. That new knowledge, coupled with the community aspect of Heathrow, like weekday masses and being surrounded by the most amazing people, many of whom were studying to become priests, God became the most important thing in my life. All I wanted to do was to know more about God, to please him in the best way that I could, to make him proud, to use the gifts and talents that he had given to me to become the person that he'd created me to be. But that doesn't mean that I got everything right, and I have made plenty of mistakes and still do along the way. But because of my close relationship with God, I know that I have a loving God on my side that I'm always able to go to ask for his mercy and forgiveness and to try again. In 2014, I started my first job as a school chaplain, and I've been a school chaplain now for 6 years. I honestly can't imagine myself doing anything else. I'm passionate about sharing the gospel and Jesus with young people, and I always want to do all that I can to help young people to see how incredibly loved they are by God. Now, I've certainly found my home in chaplaincy, and I love working with the amazing young people who come into our school each year. My days are never boring, they're always entertaining, and I always have a story or two to tell at the end of the day. Chaplaincy for me isn't a job, it's a way of life, it's my vocation, and it's who I am. And at 17, I never thought that I'd actually find what I was born to do. It's an honour to see young people journey through 5 years at school, and I'm so proud to be part in some way of their school experience and be able to speak God's truths into their lives. So there's my story so far. I know there's a lot more in store and possibly not always easy times ahead, but I know that I have a loving and merciful and incredible God by my side, always there when I need him, who has a plan for my life, and I can't wait to see what's next.
I want to say a big thank you to Kate there for that, I'm going to say, really powerful testimony. There was a lot of things which Kate talked about, which actually kind of I started to think about in my own life. And one of them things was actually self-esteem.
Yeah,
She mentioned it a bit earlier on. But like, that is such a huge thing, a huge thing in like all of young people's lives. Especially I've had it in my own life as well, where I'm questioning, am I good enough? Do I look okay? Are people going to judge me if I do this? And actually, I think to some point it did restrict me a little bit in just living my life. I remember, you won't believe this, but when I was back at high school, I was actually a lot quieter. Than I am now.
That was the case these days. Watch now.
Well,
never mind.
Yeah, but I did. Like, I remember, like, you would be like, "Does somebody want to volunteer to do this?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not doing that." People might say something, and there is an idea, isn't there, of like,
I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy.
That's it,
things like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
It's like you totally forget this whole idea of faith, of God creating you in his image, of God actually knowing who you are, and actually saying, I've made you for perfection, you go and live this out.
It's such a big statement, you know, if we believe in God and we believe the attributes of God, to say I've been created in the image and likeness of God, it can almost seem so big that we don't want to say it because we seem to be putting this on a pedestal somewhere. It's a bit embarrassing to even think that, yet nevertheless, we're told that is who and what we are. So it is like a big thing to own that and take it into ourselves. It's great that Kate, you know, came to that realisation. You have as well, apparently, by your vocal contributions that you now make.
Yes.
But you know, I think that's a great thing. And I think there's two sides to that coin as well. That when we acknowledge who we are as a child of God, then we have then got to acknowledge that other people are children of God. So, you know, if I'm created in the image and likeness of God, that doesn't make me any more special than you, than other people, because they are also children of God as well. That means I've got to treat them as children of God. And that's what Kate ended up doing in her life with the YCW thing she spoke about. See, judge, act. That you see something, you might see injustice, you might see wrongness, whatever it is, you judge that as if that is wrong, that is bad, I want to do something, and you act on it, and you try and make the world a better place. And that's what Kate did. She realised there are things that can be made better in the world, and I am going to do something because these people deserve help. They are also children of God, just as I am. And I know in our own diocese, I think that's a really important thing for the Archdiocese of Liverpool, maybe even more than other dioceses around the country. From my experience of speaking to other people around the country, I know this really seems to hit home for us. And the reason I say this is because I think we have the largest youth pilgrimage in the country. It's Lourdes, I'm talking about. You know, 500 young people go to Lourdes every year. And they don't go for a holiday, they go because they see the face of God in other people and want to help those other people. It means a lot to the young people in our diocese. And again, a few years ago, as we both know, we started the Faith in Action award scheme in this diocese. It's still only a new thing. It's a national scheme though. But again, I think Liverpool has by far the most young people registered. And this isn't a compulsory thing. We don't make anyone, we don't force anyone. Schools aren't forced to join this. It is entirely voluntary for young people. But those young people register and want to do this because they want to help other people, they want to put their faith into action. They recognise that they're part of a community, they have other people around them, and they want to help those other people around them. Yeah,
and I think Kate also mentioned something about kind of, I'm going to say like inspiring figures in her life. She talked about how like her mum especially was this figure which perhaps guided her and encouraged her to maybe do them certain things to help her on that journey, to treat others accordingly, I suppose. And I think that's like a lovely kind of statement, because just like Kate, my mum, I don't know where I would be on my faith journey without my mum being beside me, without my mum perhaps telling me off at times, without her trying to guide me. I don't know where on earth my journey of faith would be. There are like them figures in our life, whether it's like our brothers, our sisters, even like our friends, or even maybe the teachers at school or people above us, who do inspire us to think, actually, there's more that I can offer here, there's more that I can do on my journey.
I think that's true. I think it's certainly the same for me. You know, I think about my family. You know, it gave me a good example of living life, but also living in the faith as well. But I think it's also important we don't just always focus. No, this isn't what you were doing, just giving an example, but it is important we don't just focus on people older than us, for example, or people who might see in some kind of position of authority, I don't know if that's the right word, but you know, we don't just always think my parents have to give an example, or my teachers, or a school chaplain, or even a priest, or a bishop. We can look at other people to give examples. And the church has actually really done us a favour with that regard, just in the last few weeks, because the church has given us all, across the world, an example of a young person who we can look up to as an inspirational figure. He's called Carlo Acutis, And he was born right here in this country. He was born in London. Then when he was a young child, he moved away to Italy. But sadly, he died when he was very young. He died as a teenager.
Yeah.
But the church has put him on the road to sainthood. So he is an inspiring figure now for all of us. Now you might be sat there thinking, that sounds interesting, I'd like to know a little bit more about him. Well, fortunately for you, we have now a short video about the life of Carlo and about how he can be an inspiring figure for me and hopefully certainly for you.
When we think of saints, we probably imagine medieval mystics, priests, and holy people who lived remarkable lives throughout the centuries. So we probably wouldn't consider a 21st century teenage boy, such as Carlo Acutis, as a likely candidate. But this young teenager, through his remarkable and yet short life, shows us that we can all become saints. Born in London in 1991, Carlo grew up in the Italian city of Milan, where even at a young age he developed a deep devotion to the Eucharist, often spending time either before or after Mass, reflecting in front of the tabernacle. He would say, "If we get in front of the sun, we get a suntan, but when we get in front of the Eucharist, we become saints." He displayed a deep devotion to Mary, the Mother of God, frequently reciting the Rosary. And he would preach to his friends about how Christ was really present in the Eucharist. Carlo was always cheerful, and he had a talent for computers, where he built a website to share his faith with others online, to evangelize and proclaim the gospel. It is there he wrote, "The more Eucharist we receive, the more we will become like Jesus, so that on this earth we will have a foretaste of heaven." As he got older, he contracted a very painful disease called leukemia. Despite this, he continued with his mission to share his faith online. Despite the great suffering he endured, he offered it up. "I offer all the suffering I will have to suffer for the Lord, for the Pope, and the Church." On the 12th of October 2006, Carlo died at the young age of 15. Just how much Carlo's life, faith, and witness had touched so many became apparent at his funeral, when the streets of Milan were overflowing with those who had turned up to pay their respects. Many were surprised to see such a huge turnout, including the poor and homeless who came to pay their respects. It transpired that Carlo had not only been sharing his faith with others online and preaching to his friends, but he had also been secretly helping the local poor and homeless by bringing them sleeping bags and food. Carlo's life, although it was tragically cut short by his illness, nonetheless serves as a witness to us all that the path to holiness and sainthood is within all of us. Just as Carlo dedicated his life to Christ, where his one ambition was simply to always be close to Jesus. That's my life plan. We too can follow in his footsteps.
I really do like Carlo.
Yeah.
I think his message, especially for me as a young person and perhaps you watching from home, I can really relate to. It's like the idea of just living like this normal life in this modern world, but actually somewhat becoming this disciple of God, really, to even be on the way to sainthood. I mean, that's fantastic stuff, isn't it? Something which you never really would even contemplate in your own life could happen to you, especially in Carlo's as well.
Yeah, I think, I have to be very careful how I word this because he's on the road to sainthood and is clearly a far, far holier person than I am or will ever be. But I struggle a bit with the story, because you said you liked it.
Yeah.
Now, can I say this? It isn't as if I don't like it, but there are perhaps other saints for me that kind of speak to me a bit more. And the reason I say that is because it was like the social media stuff and the missionary for social media and all this kind of thing. Because people who know me at all, and Lauren will know this, I am not on any social media at all. I'm like a ghost on the internet. You can't find me at all, and that's because I don't like it and don't want to be on there. And also, I'm not really, great on computers. That's not my area of expertise whatsoever. So I think one of the things that's come across from watching that video is, very sadly, I now have to admit I'm an old man. So that's kind of sad for me. But I suppose the reason the church has created put Carlo on this road to sainthood isn't for people like me. It might be helpful for people like me, but it isn't really for people like me. It's people maybe like you watching this at home. Young people in our own archdiocese, and you're thinking, what can I do with my life? How can I be holy? Can I be holy as a normal person who likes playing on computers, playing football, and all these other things? The church said, well, actually, yes, you can.
But what you're not getting here is, like, Carlo, he went out with his mates, he played football. You just spoke about playing football with your mates.
That is true, yeah.
And he would just live like this normal life. Have you seen him in the clear coffee? Now. He's there, look at him, he's got his night shoes on. Do you just stop? You like your fashion
I do like the Nike. I do like the Adidas.
But also as well, name any other person who's on the way to sainthood, or who is a saint, who would look like that.
Well, perhaps the young people at home could just look in the mirror and they could see themselves, because I suppose the whole point of today is, and the whole point of Carlo, is reminding us all that we can all be on the road to sainthood, and maybe in some ways we all are on the road to sainthood. It's up to us to continue on that road. God didn't start us right at the start of our life at baptism and say, there's the road ahead of you, but actually I'm deliberately going to set you off on a path that will never lead you to sainthood. He starts us off and says, this is the road. We make the choice as we go along whether we're going to stay on that path, and Carlo did do. And I suppose that's a challenge for all of us, like Mike and Kate recognise, there were challenges along the way, maybe they made mistakes, but they got back on it. I suppose that's the same for us, certainly the same for me. You think, well, should I have done that, shouldn't I have done that? And actually, I'm going to try and get back on that path. And Carlo, I think, his example is a good one, because it does show that we can be normal, but still be on this path to sainthood. I think it's an important message, perhaps even if it isn't quite maybe speaking to me, as I said, this old fuddy-duddy, apparently.
I think like what I particularly like is this admiration which you have for like the Eucharist. It's like mentioned throughout, and I like the idea of like he didn't just kind of keep that message to himself. Like that's like quite interesting, really, because in the video it said like he made his own website with all of the miracles, the Eucharistic miracles from all over the world. He was like driven by their miracles, and actually I think that's like really interesting. And I can imagine now, I'm guessing like maybe you would have had your own, maybe like your Nokia by that point, I don't know, Nokia brick, but like texting his mates and going, look, go on this website, look what I just made. And that's like the courage which he had, which personally I could make up a website and do that for myself, but I would not have the courage to maybe text around my mates or verbally say to them, have you checked this out? Have you checked what faith is? Do you know what's happening around the world? And I think that's what makes him such like a special individual, is because he maybe has taken not just the aspects of faith, not just the fact of caring for others, but actually the fact of, I'm going to try and make a difference in this world to kind of give the message stronger of what faith, what the Eucharist and what time with God really does mean.
I think in some ways that brings us all the way back to what we spoke about after Mike gave his testimony about courage, knowing God is with us. That, it's sometimes harder when you're young to talk about faith because we can't see God active in our life. And maybe as we get older, we can see God because we can look back further. It's just a matter of time. The longer and the further we can look back, we can see God at different places. But when you're maybe a bit younger, you can't see God quite as much. But I suppose what made Carlo a saint is that he could see God when he was a teenager. So I suppose what that leaves us with, and maybe with you with at home, perhaps as a young person watching this leave something for you, is to challenge ourselves all the time, to try and find God in our everyday lives. To not just take everything there and just think, well, that's okay, I'm happy with that, but maybe to challenge ourselves. What can I be doing today? What can I do better today? Can I see the world in a different way today? I think if we all continue to challenge each other to continue on the path that God has set for us, then ultimately perhaps we can all hope to be saints of the third millennium.
The last half year has not been an easy one. We have heard more bad news than good. However, in amongst the chaos, we have seen glimpses of hope. People caring for others, doing everything they can to help during this challenging time. Today, we are reminded of a young London-born teenager who put others before himself, making this world a little kinder and more joyful. Carlo Acutis, born in London in 1991, will be beatified on the 10th of October 2020. He will be recognised as blessed by the Church. This is the step before becoming a saint. Pope Francis will declare Carlo blessed because it has been acknowledged and proven by the Church that Carlo achieved a certain degree of holiness even at such a young age. Once Carlo is beatified, he will be known as Blessed Carlo. Carlo is a candidate to become the patron saint of computer programming. The way Carlo chose to live, helping his friends, the poor, the vulnerable, and using his computer skills to make the world a better place, is truly inspiring. Are you challenged by the life of Carlo? Do you notice the injustice sometimes around you in the world? Do you feel moved to action? Take a moment to reflect. In what ways could you follow Carlo's example? Could you be more respectful towards your friends, your peers, even yourself? Could you do something to help the less fortunate? Or even making someone's life at home just that little bit better? We are all called to sainthood. There is no pre-selected few of us that become saints. We all can. For some of us, it is a journey of a lifetime. For others, an instant conversion. However long it takes, it is a journey of joy and love, of service and commitment, of hope and compassion, of truth and holiness. Do I consider my own journey to sainthood? Do I know that I am called to become a saint? What does Carlo's story say to me? In what way is God speaking to me through the life of Carlo?
I think that clip there gave us kind of a few different challenges, but nevertheless it did mention actually perhaps kind of the world which we are living in at the moment. And maybe like when we're looking at our own lives, we can see this kind of chaos, we can see perhaps things going on and we're thinking, is things going to get any better? Are things going to be any better? But the video reminds us that actually we can still continuously, through even these hard times, do different acts, do different ways of demonstrating our faith to others, to be those disciples walking on our faith journey, and to even be possibly walking onto the journey of sainthood. And so I think it does, like rightly so, conclude our youth service event today, which we have prepared for you. And it did give you like a few challenges, I would say, in that clip. Different things which maybe during this time you can do. But I actually have my own little challenge for you now. So Father Simon,
What's that thing you have in your hand?
this is a phone.
A phone,
Yes.
right.
I know. So hopefully, whilst you're watching this now, you will have your phone beside you. A really, really simple challenge. All I'd like you to do is I'd like you to either go on like your social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, even on Snapchat, and write a message to someone or to a group of people. This could be maybe like a quote which was mentioned through Carlos's story. It could in fact be perhaps a picture of like a candle just to symbolise I'm praying for you. It could maybe be just a little kind message to a group of friends which maybe you haven't spoken to in a long time. Just maybe that simple act, but for others to know that you are thinking of them at this moment in time. So that's my little challenge to you. A very simple one, but one which actually I think could be quite effective.
I think that's right. It is these small challenges that can help us keep on the road to sainthood, really. And that can be a big word to use. You might say, oh, none of us can be on the road to sainthood. But I suppose what we're trying to show is that we can be on the road if we try and live the life that God is asking us to live. But if we are trying to challenge ourselves, it's also right that we don't just try and do that through our own power. That's not what God wants of us or He asks of us. He always asks that if we're trying to do anything, we ask for His help and His grace, it's called, to be in our lives, to act for the good of others, to act for the good of the world. And so to bring everything to an end today, I'm going to pray for God's grace to be with you, to be with us, to try and live out the life that the Lord is asking us to live. I'm just going to do that through a very simple blessing. The Lord be with you and with your spirit. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. Go in the peace of Christ. Thanks be to God. I think that's pretty much it. So it's been nice to be able to spend this Youth Sunday with you. It's pretty much all we have to say. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the day whenever you're watching this. And hopefully we'll be able to see you in person very soon. But that's it. So goodbye from me.
And goodbye.
And as you speak